Welcome to the Truth and Liberty broadcast. We believe we have a mandate to bring godly change to our nation and the world through the 7 spheres or mountains of influence. To further this cause, we give away a product every week that will empower you to get involved in changing your life and changing our world. You can register for our weekly giveaway by subscribing at truthandliberty.net. You can also subscribe to our newsletter to receive weekly updates on guests, news, and much more. This is an interactive live cast, and we welcome your questions. To ask a question during the live cast, use the comment or chat features. Now get ready to dive into this week's topics with our hosts on location in Colorado, USA.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to tonight's broadcast of the Truth and Liberty livecast. We are so glad you're joining us tonight, and I'm just super excited tonight. Karen Conrad is with us. She's going to be hosting with me tonight, and we have as our special guest tonight, Stephanie Curry. Stephanie, it's so good to have you with us. And Stephanie is with Family Policy Alliance, and you're going to hear more about her in just a little bit. And just so excited to have her with us. We've gotten to know each other over the last couple years, and I tell you, she is a real warrior, one of those silent warriors for Christ that's out there in the public square, getting the work done and standing up for truth. It's awesome. But we're really glad you guys are with us tonight. So glad to have you. Truth and Liberty is interactive, so make sure that you are posting your questions, and we'll do our best to get to those. And I'll give Stephanie a proper introduction here in just a second, but I want to turn it over to Karen. Karen's got some really important information to share with you tonight. So Karen?
Great. Thank you, Richard, and welcome to Truth and Liberty. It's just such an honor to be here, and what a week. We've had so much going on, so it's going to be a great program. And we just want to remind you that the best way to watch Truth and Liberty is on truthandliberty.net. We have had what we call a little bit of a censure problem sometimes on social media. And while we're always going to be on social media, that's your best place to actually watch Truth and Liberty. Also, we've got so many resources that are available for you. Did you know that we've got a 24-hour news feed on Truth and Liberty? And really what that's designed to do is to allow you to go to one place to catch all the news that you need to hear. What I like about it is Richard is watching over the news, and he's bringing you the best articles, the best information from multiple sources. And one of the things that we know is big news this week that we'll be talking more about is President Trump signing the executive order for religious liberty. What a great thing that he did, and we're excited to visit with you about that. As Richard mentioned, this is an interactive event tonight. We love to get your questions, and we get to as many of them as possible. So I just want to let you know that if you're watching on truthandliberty.net or awmi.net, the way that you post your question is to go ahead and type it into the chat section. If you're watching on social media, go ahead and enter that question in the comment section. And we've got a whole team standing by, and they send those questions in. And as I mentioned, we'll get to as many of them as possible. I'll tell you what, there is always something good going on at Andrew Womack Ministries, and we've got some great events coming up. Andrew's going to be in Orlando on February 7th and 8th, and with all the snowstorms that have been hitting recently, I'll tell you what a great getaway to Orlando. And so join him with Greg Fritz. They're at the Hilton Orlando, and you can register at awmi.net/events. Also, we have got the men's advance coming up March 12th to the 14th. This is such an awesome event. We've got Andrew Womack, James Brown, and Tony Dungy, and many more. So go ahead and register again at awmi.net. We've got the Army Conference coming up, and that is for licensed ministers. We welcome you to that. We've got Andrew, Pastor Dwayne Sheriff, Billy Epperhart, and Dr. Barry Burns. And then the Charished Campus Days are coming up on April 15th to the 17th. If you thought at all about going to Charished, I want to encourage you to attend again, April 15th through the 17th, and you want to register for that. One of the great things about being part of the Truth and Liberty family is we have a drawing every week. And this week we've got a winner, Peter Blake. Congratulations, Peter. You won Andrew's God and Country. It's a great CD, and it includes David Barton, so you know that's going to be great. And this week's product we're going to give away is Faith Builders. It's a CD by Andrew Womack. It's very easy to be eligible for that product. Just subscribe at truthandliberty.net. There it is. Thank you, Richard, for holding that up. I'll tell you what, that is such a great teaching, and it's so foundational. And, it's always good to get back to the basics, but what Andrew shares is always some revelation, no matter how many times that we listen to his material. So register for that. Also, we know during this time, there's so many issues that are happening, and we just need prayer and agreement at times. And one of the things I love about Andrew and the ministry is he provides prayer support for us. So if you would like prayer, call the helpline at 719-635-1111, and you'll be connected to a prayer minister. And last but not least, if this is a blessing to you, if you tune in every week, or maybe it's the first time that you're tuning in, share this with friends. Get the word out for us. And if you would like to support Truth and Liberty, please give at truthandliberty.net, or you can call the 719-635-1111. Even though the donations are not tax deductible because we are a 501c4, so we can talk about some of these topics that we discuss, I'll tell you, it is great seed to sow, and I believe God will give you a harvest. So with that, Richard, I'm so excited for you to introduce our guest tonight.
Well, thank you, Karen. It's so awesome to have Stephanie with us. I'm really excited to be able to introduce you to our viewers, Stephanie, and for them to actually hear your story, because as Karen said at the beginning, it is just inspirational. And you are would it be the policy manager for Family Policy Alliance?
Yes.
And what do you do for them?
Well, I'm the public policy manager for Family Policy Alliance, so I support our organization in our mission to advance policy that supports a nation where God is honored, religious freedom flourishes, families thrive, and life is cherished. So what I do on a day-to-day basis is write policy for states all over the country that support those values.
Wow,
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I love it.
You know, we've known each other for a little while, and I knew that you were adopted, but I did not know the details of your story, and it's really incredible. As I was reading through it, first of all, you had a twin sister.
Yes.
She's gone to be with the Lord now,
Yes.
but you guys, your mother was addicted to crack cocaine in the inner city, Los Angeles, and what happened?
Yeah, so my birth mother she was in her 40s when she gave birth to my sister and I. We were the last of her 10 children that she already had, and I don't know how many pregnancies. She was addicted to drugs, homeless, living on the streets. Maybe she was living in a garage at the time she was pregnant with us. And she had the wherewithal, though, to make it to a hospital when she went into labor. And she gave birth to my sister and I, my twin and I, in Los Angeles County Hospital. And then she snuck out the hospital window, and that was it. She abandoned us to the state. But so my sister and I, we were 1.5 pounds each when we were born. We were a couple months premature, almost 2 months premature, and of course going through drug withdrawal, had to have surgeries. And so, really it was almost a death sentence. Statistically, we weren't supposed to survive. But I tell people God had another plan for us. He had a plan to give us a hope and a future, and he did. And so a few years later, my sister and I, we were in foster care together. We were adopted together by a Christian family who raised us to love Jesus. And I love it because I tell people that God wrote the story of salvation in our lives, and he gave me the adoption story that he gives to so many of us when we join the Christian faith and we join his family, is that my sister and I, we were born unwanted, we were broken, we were addicted to drugs, we didn't have a future in that life. And so with my new family, they gave us new names, they gave us a new family, they gave us a new inheritance and a new future, and they rewrote the story for us. Wow. And I think that's what God does with us when he takes us in, broken
Absolutely.
and wanted. Yeah.
That's what Jesus does, isn't it?
Amen.
That's awesome.
Yes.
That is so amazing. You know, I think a lot of mothers in the situation of your birth mother are told today that, you know, you need to just abort this pregnancy, get rid of this, you know, you can't handle it. The child's life won't be worth living, right? Because you're being born into poverty or drug addiction and so forth. But look at your story, and isn't that an incredible answer to that whole way of thinking?
Yes, I think that's one of the reasons why God allowed me and my sister to have this story, is to be able to speak into the lives of others and mothers who are in desperate situations like my birth mother, and yet no one could have known what would happen with my sister and I. And in fact, so many people probably were even whispering in my birth mother's ear, these are your 10th children, you know, you're addicted to drugs, you have no way of taking care of them. The responsible choice would be to abort. And I am so thankful that she loved us enough to give birth to us and to trust God, I believe, to take care of us, even though she couldn't. And God loved us more, and he has a plan, I think, for every mother who has a pregnancy that has raised a lot of questions in her life. You just don't know what God is going to do, and he can't be limited, you know?
Well, and you're also an attorney.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
So you've risen above and gone, all those circumstances and gotten a law degree, and now you are serving God, advocating for truth and righteousness and life and freedom. It's just amazing.
Amen. Only God can do that, right?
Yeah,
no one can get the credit but God. And a big thanks to my adoptive parents, Tommy and Teresa Newsom, who loved us through all of it and raised us right.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. That's awesome.
Yes, thank you.
Well, so you're, as we said, you're the policy manager for Family Policy Alliance.
Yes.
Now, what is the Family Policy Alliance?
So Family Policy Alliance is an alliance of 40 state-based councils across the country, family policy organizations, and we are like a national organization that exists to serve this alliance. And we all have the same mission to advance policy that supports religious freedom and life and family. And so what we do is a lot of different things, but we have 4 main pillars where we want to activate the community, we want to activate the church, we want to activate legislators, and we want to activate families to get involved and to exercise biblical citizenship. And so we do that in many different ways, and I'd love to talk about that more, but we are completely a faith-based organization, and our whole goal is to support policy and election efforts and engage pastors and churches and legislators and how they can live out their biblical citizenship, their biblical principles out in civil society and what that looks like.
That's really great. Now, one of the things I like the most about FPA, there's so many organizations out there, it's like alphabet soup, you know? And we're friends with a lot of them, and they all have strengths, you know. But one of the things I really like about the Family Policy Alliance is that your organization is really involved at the state level.
Yes.
Right? It's not just, the president and the presidential election and impeachment and all this stuff way up here, but it's the laws that are made in the states, every day of the year that actually, have a direct bearing on people's lives and that kind of thing. So how is it the FPA is involved? What do you guys do at the state level?
You're absolutely right. I think that's what makes us unique and that makes us stand out, is we are involved in the state level. So we have 40 organizations in 40 different states that we partner with and ally with. And we support policy in those individual states. And we support elections and legislators and walk with them and church engagement in those states specifically. And I don't think anyone else is doing this. Any other organization that is faith-based and biblically principled, is serving states. And we want people to know that state policy is so important. And really, that's where everything begins, is in the state and how powerful state policy is. I think a lot of people get lost in federal policy, and they maybe don't focus as much on what's going on in their state. But, even with Roe v. Wade, that started with a state law, like so many of federal policies that we have. And so we think our focus should be on states right now.
Well, so I think a few years ago, the liberals kind of woke up to a reality that, hey, we're running into all this trouble at the federal level getting anything done. Let's shift our focus to the state legislatures and let's start going down to state and local levels and re-engineering this thing. Am I right on that?
Absolutely.
There's kind of that took place in the last 10 or 15 years?
Yes.
And we conservatives are just now waking up to it, aren't we?
I think so. It's taken us a while. There's been people in our movement that have understood that for a while. It's taken us a bit to unite and come together and pull our resources, which is what FPA wants to help do. We want to help all the state organizations that are working with the same mission and focus as us and help support them all. Can we all be united, working together? Because we can't be successful against the liberal agenda if we're all doing our own things. So what we seek to do is unite our movement across the nation. And we hope to have allies in all 50 states soon.
So those state organizations that you're talking about that are under your umbrella or allied with you, those are called what? Family policy
councils.
Family policy
most of them are
councils.
called family policy councils.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you guys have a website?
We do, familypolicyalliance.com.
Okay.
And if you go to our website, familypolicyalliance.com, and click on at the top, the banner on the right that says allies, you can see all the state allies that we partner with and click on them and see what's going on in your state.
Wow, fantastic.
Yes.
Great, that's great news. Well, so you mentioned you're donor supported, right?
Yes.
Okay, so it's important folks know they can give to support what you're doing.
Absolutely.
And so what's going on in the states right now? What's the news out there today at the state level? Let's just take, say, for example, the life issue. What's happening?
There's so much, gosh, Richard, there's so much happening with life, which is
talk
great.
the rest of the
It's a good
livecast
thing.
about
Yes,
that,
I
right?
could talk the rest of the time, but I'll keep it short. I think the top priorities that we're seeing in the life movement is born alive protections. I know you've talked a lot about that on this program, and we've all heard the egregious stories of some political leaders who, if a baby is born after a botched abortion, do they have the right to medical care? And I think that's such a simple answer for most of us. Yes, they do. Yeah. But unfortunately, we're in the place where we have to pass laws that actually say, you need to protect babies if they're born after a botched abortion and get them medical care. At that point, it's not even an issue of life anymore. That's not even debatable. So that's one of the big efforts that we're seeing on the federal level and across the states is born alive protections.
Well, now in the federal level, the House won't even let them vote. Not just not pass it. They won't even let them vote on the Born Alive Protect Survivor Act, whatever that's called. But you are seeing progress in the state legislatures on that?
Yes, we are. And we're seeing progress across the nation with life in many different areas, not just with born alive protections. And I think part of the reason is because the left has gotten so radical and so far, left that many people are just outraged and they see that we need these protections. Dismemberment bans is another one that we're still supportive of and that are still being passed at the state level.
Now, what is that, a dismemberment ban?
Right. So that has to do with abortions where the baby is dismembered in the womb, and that's how the abortion is taking place. And that's inhumane. If you believe, like we do, that babies in the womb can feel pain and that it's life, that's just a barbaric way of having an abortion. Yeah. And so we're trying to stop that. And then you're seeing heartbeat bills and you're seeing the pro-life movement pushing that abortion clock further and further back and saving babies at earlier and earlier ages. And we're all for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
I take a minute and talk to our Colorado viewers. There's an initiative petition in the works here in Colorado called I think it's Initiative 120, but we're trying to put on the ballot here a ban on late-term abortions, so any abortion after 22 weeks. And you can find a link where you can go to get information about where you can sign that petition on our website. So I wanted to do that. And the deadline's coming up on those signatures, so we need to get that done.
Yes,
Yeah.
a great way to get involved.
And this Friday, I think, is the National March for Life in Washington.
Yes. Is it Friday?
I think it.
Gosh, yeah.
January 24th, the anniversary Roe versus Wade.
Yep, the 24th.
I was real encouraged because last week Denver had its March for Life, and there were about 4,000 to 5,000 people, I think. And then I heard there were 10,000 in Arizona and 10,000 in Chicago, and these are really high numbers compared to past years.
That's so great.
Yeah, I think we should be encouraged.
Yes, our movement, we're waking up. We're seeing what's really going on, and the church is, I mean, this is an easy issue, I think, for the church. The church understands that it's not just a political issue. It is a life issue. It's a church issue, and we all need it. And Christians are turning up in the life movement. And I hope to see the same for other areas that we work on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you know if I could ask a question quick on that, Stephanie? That's really good information. I mean, I think one of the things that we have seen is that the liberal agenda did get ahead of conservatives, and they really staked out states that had a propensity to really turn liberal. Colorado would be one of those where there was just a real concerted effort to maybe find the weaknesses or maybe the opportunities. One of the questions I have for you, because I do think we're going to see more going towards the states. The Supreme Court is looking at sending some things back to the state. But what sort of strategy are you doing to look at the states that you know we've got a real opportunity to go in and get some of these key things changed with legislation?
Well, our strategy is several-fold. Of course, we're supporting legislative efforts where we're writing this policy, we're contacting legislators, we're providing our policy support, bill language, facts, but also we're involved in elections. We want to make sure we can get, just like the left does, we are getting people in office that are going to represent the people and are going to pass policy and support policy and vote on policy that's pro-life, pro-family. And so elections is important. And then finally, mobilizing the church, mobilizing Christians, and mobilizing even faith-based communities, not just Christians, but faith-based communities that believe in life. And so ensuring that people know and are aware that their voice matters, their voice counts. You can call your legislator, get involved, know the issue. You can write them, you can show up at a hearing and testify, and if that's too much for you, even approaching your pastor and just having a conversation with your pastor, hey, maybe we can talk about this in a church service, perhaps, or maybe we'll just start with a Bible study, but just engagement and raising awareness is so vital, and having that information as to what abortion looks like. It's no longer like it was in the 1970s where people didn't really understand abortion and they didn't understand the issue, and we didn't have the medical technology that we have now, or ultrasound technology. But Americans, they're waking up, and we're seeing it more and more. It's becoming easier and easier, I think, for people to grasp. And so we've got to catch that momentum and keep it driving forward to protect lives.
Well, one of the things I think that FPA does that I wanted to highlight tonight was you have a Statesman Academy. So if there's anybody out there that you're considering running for office or feel like maybe God's calling you into that area, that might be something you'd want to check out. We, here at Charis Bible College, I have to give a plug, we have our own practical government school, so it's top notch, but I'm sure FPA has something, that's good for those who can't make it to Charis. Tell us about the Statesman Academy.
I'd love to. Our Statesman Academy, it's just a dynamic program for legislators, for newly elected legislators who really want to dig into the biblical foundations of the country, who are seeking out how to be trained, how to be equipped, how to live out their faith in the legislative office, and how they can best represent their constituents as far as living out biblical principles. So we fly legislators out from all over the country. You apply, And if you're accepted, we fly you out for an intensive 1-week training program, all expense paid. And then we walk with you as you advance in your career. We walk with you throughout the legislative session, providing all kinds of support that we can provide, and provide you with mentorship and just that alumni support, because it's so important that these legislators know that they're not alone. And sometimes I think the state capitol can be such a lonely place for some of our legislators. So we want them to know you're not alone. You have these 10,000s of people or thousands or hundreds of thousands of people that are supporting you. And this is what they're saying to us. And it's just a great opportunity. If you're newly elected, visit our website at familypolicyalliance.com, or if you just want more information, go to our website and click on Statesman Academy, and we'd be happy to talk with you more about it.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, another area that I wanted to mention or ask you about that it seemed like in the last 2, 3, 4 years this is another sort of insidious thing that comes out of the secular humanistic worldview that I'm not sure we all saw coming, but it's the assault on parental rights that's coming from the left. We saw this last year in Colorado with the comprehensive sex education bill that had some components in it. It's really taking that whole subject of sex and identity and all that away from parents and putting it in the schools. What are you guys seeing on that issue out there today?
That is absolutely on the forefront of the major issues that we face and address on a day-to-day basis. We are seeing an assault on parental rights across the nation in many different areas, including in our child's education and medical care and mental health care, when we're dealing with our child's, even their very life. So some examples, I think one major one is the LGBT agenda really is targeting parental rights in different areas. And you mentioned comprehensive sex ed, that's a big one, where parents are being denied the ability to opt their child out of comprehensive sex ed, and they're being exposed to radical ideology that many parents and families don't agree with and object to on the basis of their faith. And the schools the state legislator actually aren't allowing parents to say no, and that's egregious. I think another big one is medical gender transition care for children. We've seen, I think you've talked about it in your show before, where we've seen children removed from the custody of their parents because they would not allow their child to transition. And that's just outrageous in our country. Doesn't a parent have the right to protect their child and protect their child's identity? And yet you have the state coming in and saying, no, we know best. We're going to tell your child what their identity should be. And that is unacceptable. Parents have to be aware that this is going on.
Yeah, that's pretty alarming. So if I'm sitting here watching the show tonight and I'm hearing about this for the first time, what can I do to get informed on this issue?
Well, if you go to our website, you can reach out to us and find out what's going on in your state. Or if you click on Allies on the front page of our website, you will see all of the states in which we have partners throughout the nation, 40 states, so most likely your state will be on there. And you can go to their websites and reach out to them on what's going on with parental rights in your specific state. You can find out what bills you can get behind. Simple phone call to your legislator, hey, I believe that I should be able to opt my child out of comprehensive sex ed, or an email, just really being informed about what's going on in your child's classroom and even in your child's doctor's office. Right. Just being involved and engaged and not just accepting the word of people who may seem to have authority and are telling you one thing when you probably have more rights than you think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one of the resources that we have on our website, I just would mention, it's the Parents Resource Guide regarding the transgender issue, and I think it's from your organization, Family Policy Alliance, and we've got a link for that under the Resources tab on our website, and it's really good. It's easy to understand in the way it's written, and it's kind of comprehensive. So, encourage all the parents, especially if you've got school-age children, to check that out because it'll help you to advocate for. Well, to protect your kids that are in the public school system.
It will, and that was written by our Minnesota Family Council ally, and we were in partnership with them. They did some great work. That has been such a demanded resource from us. Parents really are hungry to know what their rights are for their children in school and know how they can push back. What can I do to protect my child? Not every parent has the ability to take their child out of the public school system or move their child to a private school or homeschool. So we want to ensure that parents are able to know how to protect their children in public school. But we also do support school choice, and we support policies where parents do have the ability and more freedom and resources to be able to choose private school and charter schools and homeschooling options if they find out that their public school system just isn't what is best for their child.
Yeah. So what's going on that front, school choice? We were talking about this a little bit before the show, and I learned something new. It's called, what's it called?
Education savings accounts?
Yeah, education savings account. Tell us about that.
Okay, education savings accounts, I think right now they're the gold standard of school choice. ESAs is what they're abbreviated as, going back to your alphabet soup abbreviations, right. ESAs. And so that's legislation or laws that allow the amount of money that a public school gets for when your child attends that school, there's usually a allotted amount of money that a school will get. Well, this ESA program allows a state to take that money, put it on a debit card, and give it to the parent if the parent chooses not to have their child go to public school. So they're really empowering parents to be able to use that money to either pay for private school tuition or to pay for a private tutor or to even homeschool their child but still have those funds to access to take their child on field trips or get their child curriculum, extra books if a parent can't afford some of these expensive homeschooling curriculums. So it just opens up the number of families that can have access to school choice and be able to provide excellent resources and curriculum and education for their child.
Wow, that's exciting.
Exciting. If I could ask a question on that too, I'm actually from Minnesota, and I know one of the things that was really a concern in that state is they were starting to infringe on Christian schools in trying to force them to do this comprehensive sex ed education, which completely went against our values. Where are we at with states now with when somebody chooses to either homeschool or bring them to a Christian school? Where are we at with that issue? Are Christian schools at risk of having to comply with this, or have we moved beyond that?
That's a great question, and absolutely Christian schools are at risk. Homeschooling families are at risk. We're seeing, again, the rights of parents being chipped away in directing the education of their children. And so what we're seeing is, so far, no state has been successful, as far as I know, in forcing parents to, for example, provide comprehensive sex ed for a homeschooled child. But for example, in Colorado, we just passed comprehensive sex ed, and we know that even though private schools and homeschooling families are not under those requirements, that the legislator did consider making it a graduation requirement. And I think we can expect that this session is that they're going to continue to have efforts to make this kind of radical ideology a graduation requirement. And if that's the case, then no one can get out of it. And that's why we have to be involved now, stop the bills now, and ensure that parents are equipped and have the tools to continue to protect their children from ideology that really has no place in schools.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, that's really good. You know, one thing that people may not understand this about the hard left is that they have, and tell me, Stephanie, if you disagree or agree with this, but they actually have a long-term agenda. And their approach is what we call incrementalism, where they realize they can't get it all in one bite. And they get as much as they can, but they don't go home and lick their wounds and say, oh, well, at least we got that. No, they say, all right, that's step one. Now here's step 2 and step 3 and step 4. So they may, this, like in Colorado, the comprehensive sex ed bill, it was actually first introduced, I think, in 2013, and it was passed then as purely optional optional, right? Okay, but they knew at that time that they weren't done. So they came back in the session last year, and now, okay, it's no longer optional. If you do sex ed, you have to do comprehensive sex ed. The only way not to do it is not to offer sex ed at all for all public schools and charter schools. And now the next phase is, okay, now we're going to make it a graduation requirement that will bind homeschoolers, private schools, and everybody. You see how that works? So what does that tell us as Christians? Can we go to sleep? I mean, can we sit on our couch and say, okay, the job's done?
No, wake up.
That's what you call a leading question.
I think you're looking for a very specific answer here. No, I completely agree. That's one thing the left is good at, is they're good at showing up. They are at every local school board meeting, certain leftist organizations. They are at every hearing that has to do with their issues. They are in the faces. They're on every committee. They are working hard day and night. They don't take a break, and they don't mind compromises at the beginning, so that, like you said, so they can build up to these egregious laws. We have to be the same. We have to be diligent. We have to be showing up to school board meetings. We can't be sleeping. As parents, we need to be aware of what's going on in our children's education, and we need to know that we have the right to speak out. Our voice is just as important at that school board meeting as the next person. Meet with your school board members, meet with your school principal, talk to your teacher, ask to just review the curriculum and see what's going on. There's just so many ways you can become informed and get involved without it being too much. Just pick what you're comfortable doing.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
That's excellent. Well, one of the things Karen mentioned when we started the program was the president signed an executive order last week. What's that all about?
So religious freedom, executive order.
Yes.
President Trump's administration signed an executive order in honor of religious freedom for Religious Freedom Day, which was a few days ago, and also just recognizing that Christians are being persecuted, and we are, and just reinforcing that we have rights and that the First Amendment protects not just our right to worship, like prior administrations maybe wanted to make us believe, but our right to practice our faith outside of our homes, outside of the church walls, and practice it in schools and businesses and in politics. And so in conjunction with the executive order, several federal agencies also had some rulemaking that they came out with, which was just excellent, reinforcing Americans' right to practice our faith.
Wow. So what's that about, the rulemaking? Because as I understand it, Trump's order was kind of broad and general.
Yes.
But maybe the rulemaking from these agencies will actually lead to some positive changes.
I agree. Yeah, President Trump's order was broad, it was general, but it also, it shows the commitment of the Trump administration and all of the federal agencies that the directive of this administration is to protect the religious freedom of Christians. And we're going to start doing that in schools and with child welfare agencies. So two of the rulemakings really briefly was one, the Department of Education came out with some rules and guidance to ensure that the rights of students is protected, the rights of students to pray. They were supposed to have this guidance every year for the past 17 years, and they haven't. And so the fact that they've had it this year is great. That shows the Trump administration's executive order has had meaning and impact.
Wow. So I think you were telling me before the live cast that existing federal law requires Department of Education to pass these rules, and that schools are supposed to inform parents and students about what their religious freedom rights are inside the school system. Like, you can pray, you can read your Bible, you can bring your Bible to school, these kind of things, right?
Yes. Federal law requires Department of Education to come out with this guidance every year to reassess the rights of faith-based students and how schools are treating them, are schools protecting their rights, and the DOE hasn't done it in 17 years. And so this is the first time they've actually followed federal law because they weren't being held accountable. And now we have an administration, and Americans are saying the DOE needs to be accountable to federal law, to our Constitution, to ensure that they're protecting our students' rights in schools.
Well, Well, that sounds like some good news.
I think so too. Absolutely.
Awesome.
With that, if for parents, because there's not been guidance before, so if there is a parent or a grandparent listening out here and they say, do you know, now I know that my child is supposed to be able to pray at school, but they're being denied the right to, what's their next step? What should these parents and grandparents do to enforce their right now that we're aware of it?
That's a great question. The first thing is the parent, go through the chain of command, talk to the principal, but you can file a complaint with your school board and your state DOE. So what this federal guidance is letting all Americans know, if your state doesn't step in to protect the rights of your students, we will. And that is huge, that the federal government is saying, we're going to hold states accountable to protect your students, and we're going to put the power of the federal government behind this to ensure that your children are being protected.
Wow, that's great. Well, it looks like we've got some questions coming in, Karen.
Yeah, so we've got some really great questions here. One of them, we just talked about it, so I'm going to start with Linda, whose question is coming in on Facebook, and she's wondering, are ESAs available in all states?
No, Linda. ESAs are available in very few states. It's a pretty new concept right now, and I can't even tell you what those states are, but if you go to our website and reach out to us, we can definitely let you know if it's available in your state, since there's only, I think, maybe 4 or 5 that have a full ESA program. But we are working to pass it in more and more states every year, and people are becoming more aware of it. So hopefully that allows ESAs to gain traction across the nation as parents say, yes, this is an option that I want. This can work for my family. So I'm going to call my state legislator and I'm going to tell him, hey, you should think about ESAs.
Stephanie, do you know, would it be possible to find out if a person's particular state, whether an ESA there might be a bill pending this particular legislative session? Because in a lot of states right now, the state legislatures are in session and bills are being introduced, and maybe some of our viewers could call and say, hey, vote for this or whatever. How could someone find out about that?
That's a great question. It's pretty easy. You can go to your state legislative website and you can find that really easily, like Colorado State Legislator. It'll be the first thing to come up, and click on it. And almost every state has a search box. So you can just type in education savings accounts. And if there is a bill, it's sure to come up. If your state's in session, it may not be in session yet, but I think 43 states are in session about right now or about to be. So you can look it up and see. If you don't see anything, call your state representative and let them know you'd like to see it. And if you do see something, call or email your state representative and tell them that you would like them to support this legislation. Fantastic.
Very good. One item on parental rights that's really a hot topic today. I have a little grandson now, and my daughter and son-in-law are talking about this a lot, is vaccines. And so Andre is asking about this, and he says, please speak about the mandates to take away our religious freedom and parental freedom in regards to vaccines. He says there are fetal body parts in vaccines and other things, and the church should be talking about this more.
We agree with that the church should be addressing this issue. We don't take a specific stance on vaccinations per se, but we do oppose efforts in states that would prevent a parent or that would require or force a parent to have their child vaccinated. It absolutely is a violation of their religious freedom. It is a violation of parental rights, and we think parents should maintain the ability, again, in medical care, to make decisions on behalf of their child. And so we do actively oppose efforts in states that would force parents to get certain mandated medical care for their child in the sense of vaccines.
Excellent.
Okay, very good. Okay, this is from Joe Fiore on chat. This is a great question. Joe says, how do I get on the local board of education? Is it difficult, or would I need to campaign?
That is a great question. Well, you might need to campaign, but there are so many organizations that help with local officials running for school board. Even right here in Colorado, we have local organizations. So email me at or go to familypolicyalliance.com and click contact us, and we will get you in touch with a family policy council in your state that can answer your questions specifically. And I'm quite sure they could point you to the right organization that can help you find out what steps you need to take to run. That would be amazing, Joe. Go get them.
Yeah, that's great. Great answer.
It's great. Okay, so we have Ruthie on chat, and she says this: how do you approach others of different ethnicities about abortion and how Planned Parenthood is targeting certain ethnicities?
That is an excellent question. I gave an interview on this several months ago and wrote an article. You can go to our website and look that up, but it's so true. Planned Parenthood, I believe, does target Black and brown communities. We know that Planned Parenthood, their origins came out of the eugenics movement. They have been targeting the vulnerable communities since their inception. And I believe the numbers don't lie. I think the numbers show that their agenda hasn't really changed. And so it is one of my personal desires that even the Black church speaks more on this issue and speaks out, because I think in New York State, more Black babies are aborted than are born each year.
New York City.
New York City. And so it's important that Black and brown people of color are standing up and recognizing that we are being targeted and that this is an issue that affects our communities and it affects our families. And we need to be able to protect our children and know that the issue is so much bigger. It's so much broader than what the left has said is called women's rights. It is truly about life, and it affects different communities differently, but deeply. And so thank you so much for that question and giving me the opportunity to speak on that. And I encourage everyone to do their own research and look into the issue more.
Wow. I'm thinking of so many things right now. But one of the things, the same people that are behind Black Lives Matter are also radical abortion supporters.
Right.
And Black Lives Matter, so do white lives and yellow lives, and every life matters. But it really is just an incredible abomination, isn't it, that Planned Parenthood targets certain ethnic groups. I mean, that ought to be just outrageous to everybody.
It is. And then that they tell these ethnic groups that they need Planned Parenthood. They need this option. This is the only way you can be successful, is to abort your child. That's the only chance. And as an African-American woman, as a woman who was abandoned at birth, I think that my ability to be able to even speak into the minority communities and say, look, you can do this. There's hope for our children. God sees our children, and God can speak into your life and save your life just like he can save anyone's. Yeah. And I had a conversation with someone recently about them not seeing a lot of people of color when we talk about adoption. And I think that's a big thing, that we need more people of color coming out and speaking on adoption and just showing their faces, because we are adopting. It's just our stories aren't told as much, but we love adoption. We believe in adoption. I'm adopted, It's an option, and it gives people hope.
Wow, that's right. That's awesome. It kind of comes down to, do you view human beings as an asset to our culture, to our society, or are they a burden, right? Planned Parenthood comes out and it's like, well, these babies, if we let them become babies, are just going to be a burden, and we need to eliminate them. Plus, their lives won't be any good because of, like I was saying earlier, because of poverty or whatever the case may be. But that is such an ungodly way of looking at human beings, because God says we're all created in his image and in his likeness, and every human being has inherent worth and value.
Amen.
Sorry, didn't mean to preach there, Karen.
Amen. Never tire of hearing it. So.
Oh, that's so good. Okay, this is from Joe C. on chat, and he says, what is the chance of reversing Roe versus Wade this year?
Okay, I can't speak to that directly. I do not know, but I do know that our pro-life movement is making great progress in the states. And every time a state law comes up that goes to the Supreme Court, even a law that comes up that protects life, and a court strikes it down, which is why it's going to the Supreme Court. It's just an invitation to the Supreme Court to reconsider. And I believe as many invitations as we can send to the Supreme Court is the best strategy. We should continue to let them know that, the people have decided we're moving in a direction where we want to protect life. That is what the people want. We do not want judges telling us what we want either. We want judges who are going to respect the law and are going to uphold it in the constitutional manner, and they're not going to be activist judges. And so I think that this gives us a lot of opportunity to consider what the people want, what judges are doing on the bench, whether or not they're being activists, and that the pro-life movement is making a lot of waves. The fact that we can even ask that question, I think, is a win.
Yeah, that's certainly progress, right? Well, what's it going to be like when Roe versus Wade is overturned? Boy, you think you're busy now.
I know.
Right?
Right.
Well, I mean, it'll come down to, most likely, most people will think that it would then be kicked back to the states to decide when can abortion be restricted and that kind of thing, and be a state-by-state battle. Is that what you guys are expecting?
I agree. I think that the left sees that too, which is why they're trying to pass these laws that would kind of have a state Roe v. Wade. In Kansas, we have a huge constitutional amendment effort going where the court has found a right to abortion in the Constitution, which means if Roe v. Wade was overturned, the alleged right to abortion would be protected in Kansas. And yet there's a ballot referendum effort to reverse that and give the people the chance to speak and say what they think. And again, fight against the activist courts. And so, yeah, it absolutely comes down to the states. And that's why elections matter. Your vote matters. And it's important who is getting elected to judicial office as well.
Right. Yeah, it's not just the Supreme Court, right?
Right.
Good.
Fantastic.
Okay, this is coming in from another Joe tonight, and the question is, can churches preach politics? Is it against the law, or can their tax-exempt status be taken away?
Great question. It is not against the law. It is not against the law, pastors. That's a lot of misinformation, a lot of misdirection. I think our pastors have become afraid. I think you and I were talking about that. They become fearful. And it is our desire and hope to empower pastors and empower churches and equip them and help them know what their rights are. They can teach about politics. And one thing that our CEO, Paul Weber, always says is what is an issue that is political that isn't first biblical. And it is our belief that every social, family, religious freedom issue that we're facing right now is a biblical issue. And I think the church gets it with life. They understand it. There's really no debate. The church gets it. And yet I want the church to get it when it comes to education and get it when it comes to medical care and get it in other areas that this is a biblical issue. And this is an issue we need to be addressing because our families need to thrive and they need to be able to protect their children spiritually, morally, and, in the political realm, because politics affects every aspect of our lives, whether we realize it or not.
Yeah. Right. So what is it that Paul says? He says, what political issue is there that was not first a biblical issue?
That's right.
Wow.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
That's really great. Okay, this is coming in from Lisa, who is in Central Florida. And her question is there a list of the 40 states being referred to or the 10 states or district or territories that are not on board at this time? And then also, how do you actually know you can go into a state, or how do you enter that state? What do you need to partner with that state?
Great questions, Lisa. So the first one's easy. FamilyPolicyAlliance.com, our website, and then click on the banner at the top that says Allies, and you'll see a list of all of our 40 state-based allies with their contact information. You can click right to their website and find out what's going on, policy, elections going on in that state. Please do visit their websites. What does it take to get a partner in a state? Well, it takes someone willing to do the on-the-ground work. We have some difficult states like in Rhode Island, that it's hard to get pro-life, pro-family movement off the ground, but just one person that's willing, truly, and then a group of people that are willing to donate and provide financial support, because honestly, that's what we need. It is a huge effort to create a new organization in a pretty liberal state and to get that support. So if you have any insight into that, reach out to us, contact us. If you're willing to give, please do. Every dollar goes to supporting biblical values.
That's awesome.
Thank you, Lisa.
This last week, and maybe Richard, this is something that you can comment on too. It was really discouraging to read that there were some comments by Joe Biden being made in a church, in a predominantly African-American church, that was just very divisive and just trying to really draw racism towards President Trump. And yet when you look at the opportunities, if you look at the numbers that are there for African-Americans as far as jobs and things like that, Stephanie, give us some help here as to why does there continue to be sort of this push to say that President Trump does not support the African-American community?
I think that's a messaging and awareness issue. Is just, for so long culturally, we've been aligned with a certain party for a few decades. But I think just getting the word out there that this administration, we have the lowest unemployment rates in the Black community than I think we've had in I don't know how long. And there's more money in our pockets in the minority communities and just so many things. I can go on and on and on. And I just think it's where our values lie and where we see the administration pouring into us and who's telling us the information. Where are we getting our information from? And so being discerning, doing your own research, and just fact-checking what you hear. I encourage people to do that all the time. Fact-check it, look into it, see if it's true.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, funny you bring that up. It is Martin Luther King Jr. Day today.
It is.
So we want to honor the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. and what a transformational figure he was in American history. And it seems to me that the modern iteration of the civil rights movement has really gone astray from what Dr. King's actual vision was when he gave his I Have a Dream speech, that white children and black children would sit down and play together and no one would be judged on the color of their skin, but on the content of their character. And we have exactly the opposite now, where people are lumped into groups based exactly on their skin color, and they're labeled and said, well, you must vote this way and you must think this way. President Trump being labeled racist is actually, if you look at the facts and the evidence, is just ridiculous. Today, I saw a headline that he designated Martin Luther King Jr.'s home as a National Historic Park, which gives it certain status under federal law, allows for all kinds of funding and protection and things like that. And I just remarked to my wife, oh, there goes the racist again. Yeah. It's kind of ridiculous. And unemployment actually among African American communities at a 50 to 60 year low. In fact, I don't think there's any record of it ever being lower. And that's true for Hispanics as well. And the net wage growth in the Trump administration has been higher in the lower economic sectors. So he has actually narrowed the wage gap. So more could be said, but we've only got 20 seconds left. So I need to wrap it up. Boy, it's been a delight having you on,
Thank you
Stephanie.
so much, Richard.
What an information-filled live cast this has been. I think our viewers are walking away with a lot of new stuff. So I just want to tell everybody thank you so much for watching. Be sure to watch us next week on truthandliberty.net.
Join us next time for the Truth and Liberty broadcast. Find tonight's episode and related articles and links at truthandliberty.net. Truth and Liberty is viewer supported. If you'd like to help us continue our live casts, you can make a donation at truthandliberty.net or by calling our phone center at 719-635-1111. Our prayer ministers are there to help you with your donations and to pray with you.